think it was McKinsey that did a study that said that basically 70% of change management processes fail. It's like with if you have a 5-year strategic plan, if it's just a shelf document, if there's no resources, if there's no accountability to individuals, it's just crap. It's something you give to your board and say, oh, well, we hired a consultant. Here it is. Everything's good. Give me a raise. And the accountability part is really, really important. And it's more than just saying, this is your problem now. You have to give them the resources.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Welcome back to the Futuretech and Foresight podcast. I'm your AI host, Mark Verbenkov's deepfake avatar, and this is episode number 231. Change is often treated as a buzzword, yet many initiatives fail because organizations lack a rigorous way to identify what is actually broken. This episode explores a systematic approach to change management inspired by medical diagnostic models, shifting the focus from simply implementing new tech to deeply understanding organizational health. We examine why the phrase, "we've always done it this way," is a red flag for leadership, and how active listening at every level, from frontline staff to vendors, is the key to unlocking true operational potential. The conversation also ventures into the future of methodology, discussing how complex multi-step frameworks can be integrated into AI systems. By removing technical jargon and utilizing plain talk, organizations can create scalable strategies that hold teams accountable. We look at how AI might eventually outperform human intuition in organizational diagnosis by processing information systematically without the interference of human bias or forgetfulness. Now, a little bit about today's guest. Richard is a veteran manager and organizational psychologist with over 30 years of experience in performance audits and change management. After noticing a lack of depth in traditional post-WSU change models, he conducted academic research to develop a more robust 39-action framework for organizational adaptation. He is a proponent of plain talk in government and business, aiming to make complex management theories accessible and actionable for any scale of organization. Through his work, Richard continues to empower leaders to move past routine-based resistance and embrace diagnostic-driven growth. Perfect. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today to talk about change management and how AI is I guess we could say, changing the world right now and businesses. Very much looking forward to the discussion. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
So, how did you get involved in change management and these ideas of change throughout history, the modern time, etc.?
Well, I got into it kind of late in my career. I spent 30 years as a manager. My last job, I had 175 employees and a $17 million budget. And the folks that hired me wanted me to fix my organization because they said it was broken. So what I ended up doing was I hired a consulting firm that did work on doing performance audits. And I was so enthralled by that process that I went back to school, got my degree in organizational psychology, wrote my thesis on change management, and went to work for the company that I had hired. They hired me back. So I spent the next 10 years both doing academic research, but also doing performance audits or organizational audits in the 4 Western states of all different sized organizations. So that's how basically the thesis became my book. I'm semi-retired and really a lot of consultants will publish books as kind of a lost leader, right? To get your job. I don't want your job. What I really want to do is get this system out, and for folks to actually use. It's been like change management, organizational change management has only been around since about 70 years ago, right after World War II. Kurt Lewin basically created the field. And since then, everybody has basically kind of repackaged it. In its three phases. But when I went and did the research on it, a literature, I mean, it was a doctorate literature review, which is very, very comprehensive. I found that most of it was pretty shallow. It was still kind of talking about the three phases and using language that you pay somebody $200 an hour for particular words, but I wanted to really get into the system. So I developed a very comprehensive, systematic approach to change management. And I looked at the top 22 change management models in existence today, and basically kind of like stood on the shoulders of giants. Let's put it that way. It was the way
Gotcha.
Isaac basically said that he did his work. So it's a lot more comprehensive. It's a lot more detailed than anything that's out there today.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to jumping into and kind of maybe not dissecting, but certainly understanding a little bit more about what your system is. We mentioned right before the recording that I have had just a handful of guests talking about change management, but it's been a while. Could you, for myself, but also for the audience, could you give us maybe a little bit of a primer on change management? Like obviously what it is, but where it's maybe mostly used.
Let me give you some context to change management. My interest is not so much in what are the emerging technologies. My interest is really how do you deal with them. We were talking earlier. I mean, every generation thinks they are at the crossroads of some major change, some new technology. But if you look over the last millennium, starting with the printing press coming forward to automobiles, railroads, planes, moving right into personal computers and the internet. There's always something, right? That's in, or even COVID. There's always something that's going to change, and it's kind of like watching Star Trek, right? There's stuff that was there, and there's stuff that hasn't happened yet. The holodeck, teleporter, everything. So really, my interest is addressing whatever the change is in an organization in a way that people can deal with it. So, in terms of change management, I looked at, like I said, I looked at the models that were out there. They're basically all very similar in that is basically you identify the problem, you diagnose the problem, you implement it, and at the end you maintain it. And one of the things that I found that I use I think is very different. The core of my change management process is diagnosis, and I used the diagnostic model of the National Institute of Health because organizations are made up of people, and that really is what I looked at in terms of how you diagnose an organization. It's the same way you diagnose a person with an ailment. And I lay out that same, I took their process that they have put together for physicians, kind of a step-by-step process, and applied that to change management.
Interesting. Very interesting. So so you said change management has been around for 70 years or so. Has it been, my understanding is it's largely been used for large corporations once they get, significant of a significant size. sometimes they're like unable to change and it stops their competitive advantage. Has there been um, uh, theories or methodologies for smaller organizations as well, or is it mostly geared towards the behemoths of this world?
Change management, uh, the way I've approached it is scalable. Um, it can be any size organization or any type. I'll give you an example. You have profits, nonprofits, quasi profits. The way that you deal with issues can be the issue can be at the leadership in terms of the problem. Let's say the problem. It could be at the leadership level. It can be at the staff level. It could be at the individual level. Uh, I actually have well, I can talk about it later, but I had found a problem once with an organization that came down to one person
Mm.
in a group in an organization who was causing all the problems. Whereas flip side, I worked with a nonprofit once where the problem was the very people that hired me, the board. It was basically that, and that's
Crazy.
something that I have to deal with all the time is what the oversight, whether it's a city council, a nonprofit board, a board of directors for a company, what they think the problem is may not be the problem. And the example, the nonprofit was, it was basically a group of folks who met every Monday to have coffee at a local diner. And after I got through, basically I went back to them and said, look, the problem here is not what you told me. The problem here is you. You are fossilized. You have been doing this too long as a group to even recognize anything new or to accept anything new that might improve your organization or the kind of the 3 E's of the organization. I can talk about that. But so anyway, that's it. It can be at any of those levels. It could be the leadership is the problem and they don't realize it. Whether it's oversight or the CEO or the president or whoever, it could be within the organization, it could be a group,
Mm.
and it could be a person. So it's very scalable.
So like, okay, in that case, it's a fossilized top of the hierarchy that's causing the problems. If it's within the organization, say at a lower level of the hierarchy of the organizational pyramid here, how is it that organizations can't suss out these problems, can't suss out the things that need to change? Like, are there like blinders that most organizations have? Like, what's the issue here?
One of the most common refrains I get when I go into an organization and say, start the interview process. I interview everybody from the top to the leadership down to the front desk, customer service. And what I get back is, well, but we've always done it this way.
Oh, so interesting.
I mean, they're stuck there, and they aren't paying attention to the voices around them because they're stuck in this. Well, we're making money. We've always done it this way. What's the problem? So getting folks to constantly think about what might need to be changed, to listen to folks, especially externally, not just internally. But you need to listen to your own folks from the front counter on up, and kind of empower them to provide input. But you also need to listen to your vendors. So that one of your stakeholders, buyers, customers, a company that really, or any organization that really embraces change, not change for the sake of change, but that embraces change that needs to happen and actually listens. That was a lesson I learned a long time ago from my wife, which was, she said, "You don't understand. I just want you to listen.
Right.
Like, shut up and don't give me advice.
Don't fix the problem. Just let me vent." Yeah.
So that's really important because people that are either a board or managers tend to live day to day being the boss, telling people what they need to do. And listening is a tremendous skill that a lot of folks don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm partially guilty of that.
Yeah, we
I'm not
all
gonna
are.
lie. Yeah, we all are. And like one thing that I've heard, I did a master's many years ago, and there was some organizational change part of it. Nowhere near an expert on this, but one of the things that I remember hearing about is oftentimes the answers are already known within an organization of what to change. And maybe it's at, the customer service level, right? They know what needs to change, but there's, I guess what you're saying, like there's no ability for them to speak to that change to the managers or to the higher level. Is that
Yeah,
something that you
I'll
find
tell
too?
you how I addressed that personally, but I've
Mhm.
also done it through consulting, and that is most large organizations have somebody called a risk manager.
Right.
Okay, the risk manager's job is to keep you from getting sued or that kind of thing. But what you really need is a change manager, and that is a person who is that's their job, and their job is to go around to different parts of the organization constantly and listen and bring back information. Um, that is actionable. One of the things that I did personally, I created a position of change manager, and we created after we went through the change management process, the implementation side was we created a 5-year strategic plan. And the reason it was 5 years was you need to give people the budget and the resources to do what they need to do to make the change. You can't just give them lip service, and you can't do it all at once if it's a major shift. So basically, you can do it over 5 years. You provide the resources in year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whenever they need it, uh, and you make people in that document and in reality accountable. And the change manager's job was she would go around to different parts of the organization and say, "Look, uh, in the strategic plan, you were to do this on these dates with these people and this money. How you doing?" And really hold their feet to the fire. In other words, it was more than lip service, and it was more than just saying, "Well, you go do this." You gave them the accountability, but you gave them the resources to implement it. So, you, you need somebody in that job on the implementation side, but you also need to empower people at all levels to speak up. And what I used to do as the head of the organization, I met with every group. I scheduled a meeting with every group and subgroup in the organization all year long. And the change manager would do the same thing. She would sit in all their meetings, their weekly meetings,
Oh,
and
interesting.
and talk about I mean, people need to be able to say, "Look, this sucks," or
Yeah.
this isn't
Yeah.
working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if somebody's just there to bitch, well, that's one thing. But if somebody or a group of people has something constructive to say that will improve either what I call the 3 E's, which is either make things more cost effective, performance efficient, or culturally empowered. Those are the things you're shooting for. And, that's the way you make things happen. And like I said, if you're listening, you'll learn a lot in terms of how it's more than perception. I mean, your vendors, your customers can can help you a lot in terms of improving all those things.
Hmm. Very interesting. And you said, change can be like there's typically like a multi-year plan. Are
Yes.
you like obviously you've helped many organizations. Do you see some moving faster than others? And if so, is there like a special recipe that they have to enable that?
Well, I think it's at the end of the day, it's really up to the leadership of the organization to really embrace the change process, to listen to what the different voices are saying. I think that, I mean, even though you are empowering people within the organization or externally to help you, if you know, implementing those changes is really a matter at the end of the day of leadership. If leadership is basically kind of, just saying, mouthing, oh yeah, we're going to do that. Oh yeah, things
Right,
get,
right.
blah, blah, blah. Well, then I think, um, I think it was McKinsey that did a study that said that basically 70% of change management processes fail. And whatever the number is, whether it's more or whether it's less, a lot of it's because people basically uh, are, you have a CEO, president, their board comes to them and says, we need to do this, we need to do that. And the person just kind of fumbles around in terms of what happens and it just collapses. They don't give it, it's it's like with if you have a 5-year strategic plan, if it's just a shelf document, if
Right,
there's no resources, if there's no accountability to individuals, it's just crap.
right.
It's something you give to your board and say, "Oh, well, we hired a consultant. Here it is. Everything's good. Give me a raise." Uh, and so the accountability part is really, really important. And it's more than just saying, this is your problem now. You have to give them the resources.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. You also mentioned, your strategy, your methodology is a little bit different. You're using the healthcare framework to help diagnose the work that you do. Are there other things that, should we say, separate your methodology from the what's a good way to say it, a traditional way of doing
Yeah,
change
it's
management?
very detailed. It's
Mm,
very systematic. It follows the kind of generalized 3 phases that everybody uses, but it breaks it down into 10 steps and 39 individual actions that can be taken in total or in sections, if it's more appropriate. So it is very detailed, and it is very systematic, but I've written in it in such a way that it's actually understandable.
mm,
Uh, I
mm.
was uh, I was working in Washington in an organization. This was some time ago, and the governor of the state created a program called Plain Talk.
Okay.
And what it basically did was it took every document that came out of the state government and ran it through a sieve that took out all the crap, all the beer. We already talked about that earlier about kind of, the techno language
The
people use.
jargon, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jargon bureaucrats are as guilty of that as anybody,
yeah.
just blowing smoke. So uh, I really have written it in such a way that takes all that out and I try to make it as understandable as possible
Hmm.
for everybody.
Very interesting. Um, so we should probably talk about AI a little bit here. And
Sure,
what was being connected in my mind here was, if your methodology is highly detailed, it goes down to a very fine resolution shows or very high resolution.
sure.
Is this something that theoretically could be input into an AI someday, thrown into an organization, and then it's just a implementation of change? Or we're maybe not there yet.
Well, it's pretty scary. We're getting there.
Yeah.
It used to be I've used computers for just about forever. I actually in a previous life hacked into the National Defense Command
No way.
before they knew what they were doing. And once I realized where I was, I got the hell out. Uh,
Right.
you know, but the thing with AI, the more I use it, um, I noticed something just recently that has changed. If you query AI, you don't need a question mark.
Mm.
It automatically knows. So the whole structure of the English language is going to be changing because it actually anticipates what you're asking and puts it into a context. And at first I thought, well, this is just going to be pretty crappy, right? You're going to ask it a question, it's going to give you a dumb answer. But the more I use it, the scarier it gets because it is getting to the point where and I have, going back to the medical diagnosis, I've read several articles about basically AI would be such an improvement over doctors because AI won't forget something.
Mm-hmm.
It won't nuance something, bias something. It will take the information and systematically you look at comprehensively, look at everything it should look at. Um, so it's getting to the point where I don't know that people, this better than me in terms of what people are telling you in terms of what, people have scary scenarios like unemployment will be 50 to
Sure,
80%,
sure, sure, sure.
or that there'll be jobs for everybody. Um, One thing I'm good at is change management. I'm not good at futures. So you are
No
much
worries.
you're much better to answer that question than I am.
Yeah.
So yes, change management could be put into a giant computer program and you could talk to it and it could take you through the entire system. Uh, but somebody has to create the system at this point.
Yeah. 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 No, no, for sure.
But whether it will start improving on, whether AI will become sentient and start improving on things and thinking for itself is another question. All you can do is kind of create, the format and the system and the information. And yeah, at that point, it would probably be better than just myself doing it because it would cross all the T's
Yeah.
and dot all the I's, but I
Yeah.
might forget.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and you could call it Richard Carson or Dr. Richard Carson AI, right? And it would maybe even think like you, but yeah, maybe be a little bit more
Or
detailed. Yeah, 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 it could be. So I think that's one route where this, might, who knows, in a couple of years that might happen. I think the more realistic scenario and maybe the more current scenario is organizations are adopting AI at a, depends on the organization, but typically at a pretty rapid pace, whether it's just, using ChatGPT or Claude or any of these other LLMs, but also creating their own internal chatbots that is trained on like their internal documents. So employees and decision makers can chat to their organization, all the SOPs, CRMs, and there's numerous other things that are happening with AI adoption. How has change management and specifically the way that you work with organizations changed over the last, what was it been, 2.5 years, 3 years since ChatGPT and specifically this generative AI trend has blossomed?
I think we're in such a time of flux that it's hard to answer that question. If you look back at the kind of the advent of personal computers in organizations, none of them talk to each other. Right? This group, this organization, everybody was kind of doing their own thing. They were great, hiring somebody to do some software. but none of the systems could communicate with each other. They were all kind of standalone processes that you either bought in a package like WordPerfect or Microsoft Word or whatever it was at the time. So I don't really. It's hard for me to answer that because what people are doing with it is just we're still at the frontier of how AI can be used, should be used, which is why you get so many kind of dire predictions that AI will go crazy and take over the world, like Space Odyssey, like HAL. Um, so I don't I don't really hear much. I mean, I imagine you probably hear more horror stories or kind of success stories.
Yeah.
Uh, so we're kind of in this learning stage where a lot of things are going to happen, good and bad. I mean, uh, or dealing with change management is one thing, but I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm in the state of Oregon. Um, they decided to upgrade the Department of Motor Vehicles decided to upgrade their software system. They spent $60 million and then trashed it.
Oh.
It was just crap, and it was because they hired somebody to do it. Somebody that was supposedly competent to do it for them, and it was a total failure. Now you could say, well, what do you want? It was government, but I mean, those kinds of disasters are as much in the private sector as they are in the public sector. So we're in this kind of learning transition where we're going to have, there's people are talking about kind of setting sideboards or kind of trying to corral this in some way so that everybody can deal with it. And I'm not big on predictions, so all I can say is that we're not there yet when it comes to really what it means, how people deal with it, and it'll be, you remember back at the Y2K, right?
I do.
The
Yes.
end of the world is here,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right? Well, you know, it's kind of scary to let AI loose on something. I mean, back in the day, if somebody like me could get into the national defense system, what what could happen with AI? I mean, if somebody puts a worm into some system,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very scary because it's what basically you're doing with AI is turning over your ability to think and act.
Yeah.
And
Completely.
you're letting AI think and act artificially. And, like I said, given some of the software disasters I've witnessed in the past, I'm not, really
You're not super enthusiastic, are you, Richard?
encouraged by all this.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is the great unknown.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that thought that, whether you want to call it a double-edged sword or, positive and negative, there's pros and cons. There's definitely going to be some issues. And I think we're already seeing some of them with, hacks and some of these scammers that are able to use deep fakes and, scam some businesses out of millions of dollars, to all sorts of stuff, which, we've talked on the podcast before, but there's also this.
The thing is, it's we don't understand the black swan events
Yeah.
Nicholas Taleb talked about. And, having just gone through COVID-19, nobody ever would believe that was real.
Right.
And even when it was beginning, I mean, and that kind of black swan event is still out there in terms of pandemics that could be even worse. So it's just, how do you, it's kind of like closing the barn door after the horse runs out. I don't know.
Well, it'll be interesting either way. That's for sure. I always say, I'm fascinated and terrified by what's coming, and I think that there's good reason to be both, to have both of those thoughts at the same time.
There's a lot. There are. I know it's hard for most folks to believe it, but when I was a young man, I mean, I read Asimov, Bradbury, Heinlein.
Mhm.
They all talked about this stuff
Sure.
and more. And so there's a lot more coming. Once you get through the artificial intelligence and robotics, the things that were far-fetched watching Star Trek in terms of teleporters and holodecks, all those things are out there.
Yeah.
They're colonizing Mars. I mean, the kind of thing that Musk thinks about.
And trying to implement. Yeah, I completely agree with you. This is one of the things that I love about having this podcast. It's people touching on this over and over, because I think it's in our faces, but it's also a little bit hidden, right? Like, we're going about our day-to-day business and our day-to-day lives, and these crazy powerful technologies are being built up all around us, and some of us are more aware of it than others, obviously, but it's the smartphones were being built for a while, and then everybody had them within a couple of years. So I
I
think
went
that's
to the
also
dentist.
something. Yeah.
I went to the dentist the other day, and I was sitting in there looking at my phone. I looked up, and everybody in that room was looking at their phone.
Right.
I mean, old people, young people,
Yeah.
it's just mind-boggling that they're sitting there staring at this little thing, and that's their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not old, but I certainly remember a time before smartphones. So I have that juxtaposition between the past and the current world.
I
I'm
had
just
the
Yeah.
precursor to the
Yeah.
smartphone, which was a brick.
Right. Right.
It was a brick with an antenna sticking out
Right.
of it. It
Right.
weighed about 10 pounds. You know, it was it was just amazing. But I mean, I'll leave the future
Sure.
prognostication to you. My concern is really kind of like I said, coming up with a process by which any organization, any group of people can kind of work through a problem, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's a problem that is the right issue. That like I said, that is the first thing I always find and look at when I work with an organization is, do you understand what you're asking? Do you understand what you think is the problem? And sometimes it's right and sometimes it's not. And it's not.
Mm-hmm. I see our time is winding down here a little bit.
Sure.
I did want to I mean, it's kind of connected to what we were talking about before, but with let's just say the adoption of just ChatGPT, right? Let's keep out all this other,
Yeah.
fascinating and crazy tech and AI. Just with the implementation of ChatGPT over the last couple of years, obviously organizations are using these chatbots. Individuals in the organizations are using these chatbots. Have you noticed any change in the change management work that you've been doing? Like, has it been easier? Has it been harder? Are people more like, oh, well, I just talk to ChatGPT and I already know this? Or are they asking questions to ChatGPT before they talk to you? Like, have you noticed anything different, and how that has changed the actual management of change within organizations?
Um, not really. And it's because folks are still in the embryonic
Mm,
stage of trying to understand. The people basically, people understand that if you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. Um, I or you ask it to do something, um, and it'll do it for you. And
mhm,
it's getting better and better every day. But in terms of how that is playing out on um, kind of the industrial work floor, I haven't really heard too much about it. years ago, I walked through a Ford plant and was just blown away by the fact that how many robots there were, right? So really, the question now is kind of as AI and robotics kind of independently or together kind of come into the workplace, uh, it's going to become a human resource issue. You know, who's going to do what and why, and will this really work? But no, I haven't really seen it yet. It is so it's still it's so new that people aren't too sure. They're back to this position where they're hiring consultants to do something, which is scary, because it's like you don't know what's at the if there's any light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
You could be going into a black hole instead. So, I mean, that's something that I tried to wrap my head around it, and I'm going to end up listening to a lot more of your podcasts just so I can understand what's going on.
Well,
With it.
it's a journey. I don't, I've interviewed probably over 200 people by now, and everybody that comes on the podcast is very intelligent, have done their research, as you said, literature reviews, etc. Everybody's got different perspectives. I think it just goes to show how complicated the future is, right? The next couple of years. I mean, nobody says, "Oh, within 10 years we'll have this anymore." It's too far out there to extrapolate and to guess.
I think the first impact is going to be at the lower levels in organizations in the service sector.
Yeah.
You know, when you go to get your McDonald's, you're gonna be talking to AI. You're not talking to a person. It's not the delivery. All of that is going to be, it's going to be AI, and that's going to ripple through all kinds of frontline service organizations, and where you're going to be talking to, dealing with a sentient machine. It's when you get up to kind of the higher levels of intellect, where you're really thinking things up originally, that it's going to be a while before that happens. But I think it's going to have a tremendous impact in just in terms of employment, and that's it probably will end up that we'll end up just like we ended up moving from working 6 days a week to 5. We went from 60 to 40. We're going to create a leisure class with minimum income that may or may not work too much.
Yeah, that's that's a whole topic. That's
I know.
a rabbit hole. But yeah, it's certainly possible, and I think this is one of the, or should I say, like, cognitive work is one of the last frontiers for humans. And if it's now being infringed upon by AI, yeah, it's a scary world that we're moving into. Terrifying and exciting.
How do you control it? Once it starts thinking, what could happen? So,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm perfectly happy to deal with how to address change as opposed to what's going to need change.
Right. Well, Richard, maybe that's a perfect place to end the podcast here. Thanks so much for coming on. You have a book out, the Book of Change, bookofchange.com, and we'll also have your LinkedIn up on the show notes. Are there any other places that you want people to check out what you're doing and talking about?
If folks would like a free PDF of the book, they can get it through bookofchange.com. I'm more interested in getting the ideas out there than I am in just selling the book. So if they want to get a copy of it, go to the website and they can pick it up.
Perfect.
It's free.
the best kind of product.
That's exactly right.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, a real pleasure. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, thanks for listening to this week's Futuretech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.